Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to your Thursday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am your host, David Grubb. I hope you're having a great day. Glad to be back with you. And as we go through the dog days of summer and we look towards training camp and towards the regular season and all those things with the Pelicans, I thought today was I'll do a little preseason prognosticating and pick the players that I think will have, will be the Pelicans' best of the best this season and give you my reasons why. And again, if you've got suggestions for topics or you got questions, tomorrow on Friday, why don't we make it question day? So throw your questions down below and I'll do a Q&A tomorrow on Friday to make up for the show that we didn't do on Monday. So go ahead and leave your questions and comments below and I'll get to those as many as I can on Friday. But let's start with the most valuable player. And I think it's really easy for the New Orleans Pelicans when we talk about who should be the most valuable player in this upcoming season, and it has to be Zion Williamson. And that's been the case for every year in his career. He is expected to be the flag bearer for the New Orleans Pelicans. He's supposed to be the franchise player, supposed to lead them to heights that they have not reached before. And remember, those are modest goals when you think about the history of this franchise. This is a franchise that has only made it out of the first round of the playoffs on 2 occasions, has only made it to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons one time. So when you look at that kind of history, 2 times, but when you look at that kind of history, what you get out of the Pelicans and the Hornets going all the way back for the almost quarter century that they've been in New Orleans, is just you've been waiting for somebody to be that player to lift the Pelicans from mediocre to just good. Again, I think that most Pelicans fans would be satisfied with one continuous decade of playoff contention, 1 conference finals appearance, maybe 2. If you get to the NBA finals, bonanza, fantastic. Okay. But fans would settle at this point. At this point, they would settle for a decade of contention, of being solidly in the top 6 year in and year out. Teams wondering, hey, is this the year the Pelicans can get to the top? Maybe they're just one piece away. They're getting to the second round pretty consistently. They're making it to the conference finals every now and then. They're a threat. If you gave the Pelicans fans that, I think that they'd be very satisfied. But that all starts and ends with the availability of Zion Williamson. You guys know the numbers, but just to give them to you one more time. In Zion Williamson's career, the Pelicans are 109 and 105 when he's on the court. When he's off the court, they are 100 and 158. They have played 258 games without him. They have played 214 with him. That's 44 more games that they've played without him, and yet they are 9 losses behind. Overall, the winning percentage when the Pelicans have Zion on the court, this includes last year, which was obviously just horrendous, is still just about 51%. When they play without Zion, they're about a 39% win team. What's the difference in that mathematically? Basically, when Zion is on the floor, the Pelicans play like a 42-win team, a team that'll play just over 500, and that's taking into account all of the rosters that Zion has played with, whether they've been bad rosters, whether they've been good rosters, whether they've been healthy rosters, whatever. When he's on the floor, the Pelicans are essentially a winning team, 42 and 40. When he's not on the floor, they are 10 wins worse. They are a 32-win team. 32 and 50 would be the average record for this team when Zion is off the floor. So you are seeing a difference between a team that's solidly in the lottery or a team that's in contention for the playoffs just by him being on the floor. That doesn't account for good games, when he has 20 or more points, when he has this many rebounds, when he plays this. In all games, if Zion is on the floor, you've got a better than 50-50 chance of winning. When he's not on the floor, you're probably not winning that game. The odds are heavily against you, 62% in the other team's favor if Zion Williamson isn't on the floor. It's a safe bet to bet against the Pelicans in those occasions. So what does that mean? They score better when he's on the floor. They are 4 points better offensively when he's on the floor. They pass the better when he's on the floor. They get more blocks when he's on the floor. They make more shots when he's on the floor. They shoot it better from the floor when he's on the floor. They shoot it better from 3 when he's on the floor. Like, all of the things that happen when Zion is there just make sense. They shoot more free throws. The one thing they don't shoot their free throws is at a higher percentage because Zion is not a great free throw shooter, but you're getting more attempts at the line, which means you're putting opponents in foul trouble. Everything is better. They rebound better. They turn it over less. They do everything better when Zion Williamson is on the floor. So there are very few players in the league that you can count that every category, when you look up and down the roster, that no matter what they do, they impact it for the better. And that's Zion Williamson. So when you have that kind of talent, you understand why the Pelicans have been so reluctant to give up on a player of that ability. You don't just find those players out on the street. You don't get those players via trade. You don't get those players in the draft very often. So to have a player like Zion Williamson, you understand why the Pelicans, a franchise that has only had two legitimate All-NBA players in its history, in Chris Paul and in Anthony Davis. The rest of them have been good players, some up to very good. But when you talk about legitimate, year in and year out, All-NBA players, you had two, and neither one of them could you ever get past the second round. With Zion, you haven't even seen him play in the first round. So this season is the most important of Zion Williamson's career. This is the referendum on whether or not he will be a New Orleans Pelican in the future. This is a referendum on whether or not the Pelicans are going to go into a full rebuild, or if they can try to build around him and build a legitimate contender. I've said this, and I if you want to go back and check, the starting lineup with Zion Williamson can contend. That top five, no matter whether it's Kevon Looney at center or Yves Missi starting at center, your top five is a legitimate starting five. There are going to be nights where they're going to be the better starting five. There's going to be nights where they're slightly worse than the other opponent, and there's going to be nights when it's a dead heat. You have three players with the ability to put up 20 points per game in Jordan Poole, Trey Murphy, and Zion Williamson. All of them can do it efficiently and effectively. You have another player in Herb Jones, who's one of the elite defensive players and one of the best teammates in the NBA. And then you'll have a center who, at the very least, will compete on the glass. So you have those elements. It's going to be up to Zion to elevate all of this. Because even though the 32 minutes a game last year were effective for him, I still don't know if that's enough if you're going to have him truly be the kind of dominant force when this bench is going to be the biggest concern for the Pelicans this season. Zion may have to play 37 minutes per night in order to put the Pelicans in position to win. It's almost a very Nikola Jokic-like situation for Zion Williamson, where you wonder, as soon as you take your best player off the court, can they sustain these types of things? Because I think if you put Trey Murphy at the level of a Jamal Murray as the second best player on a team, you know that there are nights when Jamal Murray can be the best player on the floor, but he needs to have that Nikola Jokic connection there to truly be his best. And I think the same is true today of Trey Murphy. He needs the best of Zion Williamson in order to be his best. There's nothing wrong with that. But what does that mean when Zion is off the floor? How many minutes can you navigate when he's off the floor? That's going to be the test for Willie Green this season in trying to manage Zion's minutes so that you can keep him healthy for the duration of the year, though I think he will be tested in ways that he's not been tested before by Joe Dumars. He will be asked to do things that he's not been asked to do in the past by Joe Dumars and by Willie Green in this certain, by extension. But I think Zion Williamson certainly, we would all agree, holds the key to the Pelicans' success in his hands. It's not about the off the court stuff, though that stuff can be annoying and be a distraction. It is what it is. And the comment has been made before, and I agree with it. You don't have to be the most professional person off the court. I'm not concerned about your life off the court as long as you aren't harming yourself or other people. The concern is whether or not you show up every day for practice, whether or not you're late for flights, whether or not you're setting the tone by competing hard each and every night, whether or not you are working your best in the locker room, or whether you're at the training table, whether it's the weight room, whatever you're doing, you've got to be consistent and performing at a high level to do that. The other players will take their cue from what Zion is willing to do or what he is not willing to do. So there's a lot sitting on Zion Williamson's shoulders, but I think he understands that. He understands that his reputation, and throughout not just in New Orleans, but throughout the NBA, is on the line this season. What will his career be? Will he be a guy who we remember as a good player who just couldn't get it together? Will he remembered as a great player who had a difficult start to his career? Or will he remembered as a guy who wasted his potential and was out of the league by the time he was 30? Zion Williamson can start putting that story in whatever direction he wants to go this season. And that's what he has to do. And Pelicans fans are impatient, waiting for him to figure it out. And they have every right to be. But if anybody's going to be the most valuable player for a winning team this season, it has to be Zion Williamson. All right, let's move on to the most improved player. And I think the most improved player is a guy we were talking about just a minute ago in Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy has consistently improved over his first 4 seasons. A guy who started out at 5 points a game as a rookie in a year that he was very underutilized, and last season averaged a career high 21 points per game. We are getting into the stage where Trey Murphy is going to be at the height of his abilities. There's a convergence when you play sports, and if you think about it as a graph, there's a part where your athletic ability, from the day you start playing, your athletic ability is coming down, right? Is going down on this angle. You are at your best athletically at some point, but you reach your point and then it starts to come down. With your skill, it starts at a certain level and you expect it to go up. There's a convergence at some point, which is your apex, where your athletic ability and your skill and knowledge of the game meet at the perfect point and you are at your best. We are nearing that place for Trey Murphy. So this season, we need to see a jump. And it's not just about the statistical jump. Trey could average the same amount of points, but the Pelicans could be a better team and he could be a better player. So what are the areas where Trey needs to improve to be a candidate legitimately for the most improved player, not just for the Pelicans, but in the NBA? And I think Herb Jones would be a dark horse candidate for most improved if he can add to his offensive game. There isn't a lot that Herb needs to do, but it's, if he improves his scoring by 5 or 6 points per game, if Herb can do that, then he'd be a dark horse, for that award. But I think when you look at Trey Murphy, what are the things he needs to do better? If he's going to play 35 plus minutes a night, Trey has to be a more consistent in not turning over the basketball, because his assist to turnover ratio is still not quite 2-1. Last year, he averaged 2 turnovers per game and about 3.5 assists. If he can get it to 2-1, then you're starting to look at a better efficiency out of Trey Murphy, because he's not the predominant ball heavy, scorer. He's not going to have the basketball in his hands predominantly. So you want to see more efficiency when he does have the basketball. He can't give you multiple, turnovers on a day-to-day basis as somebody who's a secondary ball handler. He's got to be very efficient with the basketball, keep those turnovers low. But last year was the first year he really had to do those things. So you want to see him improve there, get those assists up to around 5 per game and keep those turnovers below 2. And I think you're starting to see what Trey Murphy can be on the perimeter, not as a full-on point forward, but as a guy who can be a good distributor as the second most dominant offensive player on your team. The second part is the rebounds. What we saw out of Trey is still that he's got to get a little bit better on the offensive glass. Certainly, his positioning is a big part of that, a big factor in what he gets on the offensive glass. Where we saw Trey most effective at times on the offensive glass is when he was playing opposite Zion Williamson, where Zion was on the perimeter and Trey was playing more of a 4 in his role and being more around the basket and able to use his 6'9" frame to attack the offensive glass. Zion is always going to be good on the offensive glass. Yves Missi is very good on the offensive glass. Kevon Looney is very good on the offensive glass. So how much does Trey need to get? If he can just give himself 1 or 2 opportunities a game, he's been under 1 offensive rebound per game for his entire career. If he can give himself, get that above 1, get to 1 or 2 offensive opportunities, offensive rebound opportunities, especially with his athleticism, his ability to come in from the wing and get tip dunks, or to use his athleticism to finish, to get rebounds above the rim, bring those back and get second chance opportunities with his explosion, then I think that Trey, again, is elevating his game to a level that we haven't seen before. Defensively, he's been consistent the last 2 seasons, right over 4 rebounds per game. I think if he can get it to 7 rebounds per game total, that would increase his defensive rebounding by 1 and increase his offensive rebounding by a little bit over 1. You're getting him to 7 rebounds per game. So you're looking at around 7 rebounds, 5 assists, only 2 turnovers. You're starting to see that consistent development. He needs to get to about 1 block per game. Again, utilizing his athleticism on the defensive end, whether it's as a weak side help defender and he's getting blocks, or it's just using that vertical length and getting up and on his own offensive matchup that night, being able to get a couple of straight up blocks that way. These are all small things to add. They are not huge statistical leaps, but they will show you that Trey is getting better. One of the areas where we've seen him go down is in his effective field goal percentage, because his 2-point percentage has decreased over the last couple of seasons, because he's been taking more drives and he's been putting himself in position. So that 2-point effectiveness has gone down because he's taken more of those shots. He's not simply limited to catching and shooting on the perimeter. He's putting the ball on the floor and driving to the basket. So I'm not really concerned about his overall shooting percentage. What I am concerned with is that the 3-point percentage has gone down in each of the last 3 seasons, while his attempts have steadily gone up. He's gone from 6 attempts in his sophomore season to over 8 attempts last season, but his percentage has decreased from 41% to 36%. Trey needs to get back to that 38 to 40% as far as a 3-point shooter, getting himself back to those elite numbers. Now, part of that, again, is on Willie Green, and how does he create shots for Trey Murphy? The other part of that goes back to Zion Williamson, and how does he create shots for Trey Murphy? A healthy team is better for Trey Murphy in that defenses cannot key on him, and he saw that a lot last year. He got double teamed. He got defenses that shifted to deny him the basketball on a more consistent basis, and that was something he needed to get used to. But I think Trey, again, is the type of player mentally who's going to understand and learn from the mistakes that he made last season and sees the opportunities as he sees in watching film. And I think the other part of it is that he's gaining more physical maturity and more confidence in what his position is in the NBA. You saw last season, before the season began at Media Day, where Trey declared, no matter whether they start me or not, I know I'm a starter in the NBA. He went out and seized that in his opportunities on the court. Now, can he take it to the next level and not just be a starter, but be an impact performer in this league? And I do believe that he can. When you're looking at 6th man, this is a very interesting category for the New Orleans Pelicans, because when we look at their roster, the bench, as I said, is their biggest concern. So how do you decide for this team who's going to be the most impactful bench performer? And when I look at this, I think the anticipation is that it'll be Saddiq Bey. And the reason I say that is because Saddiq Bey is a veteran. He has starter experience. He's been, he's got familiarity with Troy Weaver, who I think is pushing him into this role. And I'm not saying that as a negative, but he fits the bill as far as what you need in positional versatility, being able to play the 3 or a small ball 4. He shot the ball fairly well from 3-point range, a career 35% 3-point shooter. He's somebody who doesn't need the basketball particularly to be effective. Averages just over 11 field goal attempts per game. If you keep that around 11, I think that's probably good for him coming off the bench. And he's a guy who can also give you the ability to pass the basketball a little bit, and is a solid rebounder. In his last full season, he averaged almost 7 rebounds per game. So I think that the versatility there makes him the best candidate on the Pelicans to be their consistent 6th man. The other person would probably be Jose Alvarado, who has been that probably the best bench player, or the most consistent bench player over the last 2 years. I'll say that. But Jose, again, is limited by the number of games that he plays. He rarely plays over 55 games in a season. And then his height and his ability to impact the game in long stretches. Saddiq Bey, I think if you had to go with a bench performer for a long night and have him play 30-plus minutes, you'd feel a lot more confident in him than having to do that with, say, a Jose Alvarado. The rookies are just not ready to take on that kind of role, neither one of them. And I think you look at either if it's Kevon Looney or if it's Yves Missi, the backup center position playing that role, it's just not going to be impactful enough, I think, to warrant being the Pelicans' 6th man of the year. The last player potential award we're going to look at for the Pelicans, and remember, this is not league-wide. I'm looking at this as far as just the Pelicans team itself. Though some of these, I guess, if they had the kind of years I'm talking about here, would be up for those type of league awards. Now, for Rookie of the Year, that comes down to these 3 players: Micah Peavy, Jeremiah Fears, and Derek Queen. And as I've talked about before, I think, first of all, Derek Queen has the fastest path to the court whenever he's healthy. The Pelicans need length and athleticism. They need that height, and they need somebody who could come in and really impact the team offensively more than anything else. The defense is going to be carried by the starters, but the bench has to be consistent offensively. And Derek Queen, due to his proximity to the basket, his ability to put the ball on the floor and draw contact and get to the free throw line, is the best candidate to be the Pelicans Rookie of the Year. The reason that I'm less certain about Jeremiah Fears is because I've said it plenty of times, that point guard is the most difficult position to translate from college to the NBA. And when you look at this roster, whether it's Jordan Poole, whether it's Jose Alvarado, or whether it's a returning DeJounte Murray, if he's in the lineup when he comes back, there just aren't a ton of minutes at the point guard position to give to Jeremiah Fears and allow him to make mistakes if you're trying to make the playoffs. So it's really hard for him to have the kind of nights where you're building the momentum to be that kind of impactful player. There will be nights when he gets 2 minutes. There will be nights when he gets 10. There'll be nights when he doesn't play at all. There'll be more of those than I think for the other than for Derek Queen, who I think, once he's healthy, will get consistent minutes every night and get the opportunity with the second unit to be a hub and have the ball go through him and either pass the ball or to score in the low post or in the face-up game in the medium post. The other part of that Micah Peavy is, again, I think for Micah Peavy, he's stuck in a numbers game behind a couple of people. Your skills are defensive, and your position is more of that 2-3 at 6'6", 6'7". So playing the 2-3, he's behind Herb Jones and he's behind Sadiq Bey. So it's hard for him to get the kind of consistent minutes that it's going to take to be an impactful player, though I think Micah Peavy could be an impactful player. It's just, again, the numbers of this and just the NBA in general. It's hard for rookies to come in and have significant impact when they're not first-round players, and Micah Peavy is not a first-round player. And you could argue that he was a bit of a reach even at his position in the second round. So I think for Micah Peavy in particular, it's going to be a lot of patience. It's going to be it's going to be a lot of nights, in Birmingham for him. But I don't think that means that his future is by any means defined. The big question for Micah Peavy is going to be, can he shoot the ball consistently? Because I think he's going to defend the ball well. It's just, can he knock down shots? So again, I think for the Pelicans Rookie of the Year, it's going to be Derek Queen. If I were throwing one out for Defensive Player of the Year, I think Herb Jones is the obvious answer, but I think the second most important defensive player this season is going to be Yves Missi. And I say that really quickly. It's just because no one has further to go who's going to be in a central role than Yves Missi. Let's just use this number for reference last year. Herb Jones, who only played in 20 games, his defensive win shares for last season were 0.096. He led the Pelicans. This is where Yves Missi ranked among all Pelicans players. 21st, 0.018. Again, Herb Jones, 0.096. Yves Missi, 0.018. There is no player defensively whose growth is not going to be more central to the Pelicans' success than Yves Missi. He has to be someone who can stop the opponent in the paint. He was worse than even Carlo Makovic last season, and there were times where Carlo looked embarrassing on defense. Yes, a lot of it had to do with who Yves had in front of him. They did not protect him by giving him a lot of great opportunities as the back end of the defense. But at the same time, you saw it. There were times when he was physically outmatched, and there were times where he just overreacted defensively and got himself out of position. If he can be more consistent, it will be a dramatic improvement for the Pelicans defense. The center position is incredibly important for this team's defense. Kevon Looney will be fine, but how many minutes does he play? So for Yves Missi, if he's still going to play starter minutes, whether it's as the starter or off the bench, he has to become a consistent defender. All right, that's going to do it again for tomorrow. Go ahead and leave your questions below. I'll answer as many of those as I can for the Friday show. Send you into the weekend with a little service as far as that goes. So please do that. Otherwise, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then on social media, you can follow me at DM Grubb, whether that's on Instagram or Twitter. You can also find me on Facebook, Blue Sky. And of course, you can check out thebirdrights.com as well. Until the next time, I am David Grubb. This has been the Post Up on Boo Crew Media. Y'all have a great one.